Now, I don't want to leave it I don't want to leave it with a big downer on Melbourne. I said in October that I believed October would be the peak of the lockdowns, and I still believe that, even with Daniel Andrews and the powers that he's got. The politics has shifted, and I don't believe it's going to be possible for him to throw us back into a lockdown like what we saw during 2020, 2021. I don't think that's politically feasible for him anymore.
Well, just on that point, every single person that went to one of those protests and raised their voices is responsible for that. Can take contribution to doing that, right? If everyone had sat in their house and just put up with it, Andrews would have known, I can get away with this indefinitely. Yep. So every single one that marched in the streets, that went to a protest, that stood up against this, if you are correct, right? I hope you are. Every single person that
time will tell
fought can take some credit for that.
100%. And so as I was looking ahead, so if we start construction in January, the build will be finished in October, and we'll be open in November, which is perfect, right? Because we want to pick up that Christmas kind of rush, go-karting center. We want all the end of year parties. We want all that stuff, right? And I was looking ahead and going, okay, what does this look like? We got the election coming up in that November. So we open it, it gets handed over from the construction company to us in October. We've then got about a month of staff training and fit out and shop fitting and bedding everything in, all the systems and everything else, to open in November. By then, we will be out of winter. So whatever Daniel Andrews does this winter, we'll be out of that and heading into summer. Now, last summer, we had a good couple of months where we were relatively left alone. This summer, I think we're going to have the same thing again. Omicron notwithstanding, I don't think that's going to really upset the apple cart too much here. And I don't believe that we're going to see massive lockdowns again post-October of next year. In addition, I was thinking the next big risk is the vaccine mandates. And as much as morally they are completely reprehensible, if I put my business hat on, the reality is here in Victoria, most people have now been bullied into having them, right? And so from a business point of view, you're not losing, even if those vaccine mandates remain in place, which I'm skeptical, I think they'll be gone by then. And as much as morally, I think they're absolutely abhorrent, from a business point of view, I don't think there's a huge risk there. And I'm actually very optimistic about the future of Victoria. I think the groundswell that we're seeing of people getting passionate about politics, getting involved in ways that we never saw before, and wouldn't have happened if it were not for this. We would never have seen this groundswell. I think there's a huge silver lining there. And I'm actually very optimistic. Hence, we're going ahead. I am looking for that remaining investment, and we are going to go ahead. We're going to build this thing. And once we've proved that it works, we're going to roll it out around the world. We've got a location in Texas that we're looking at. We're looking at Brazil. We're looking at Mexico, a bunch of other parts of the world. Once the model is proved, we're then going to roll it out around the world and hopefully become one of these Australian sort of success stories. Here's an idea that was had in Australia, was first rolled out in Australia, and then went around the world. But I tell you what, Daniel Andrews has made my job a hell of a lot harder to attract that investment here in Australia.
Look, I hope you're right about that optimistic view of the future. And I often sit down and sort of like war game in my head. What if? What's the most likely scenario that will happen in the future? And if I know, from past you do things in a very logical, mathematical way, and if you do that, if you look at the science, you look at the data, look at the evidence, you say, well, this COVID is all over. You've got the Omicron variant, which the data is already showing is probably more like a cold than anything.
It's actually good news. The data is actually good news.
That's right. The data is good news. You said, but the transmissibility is high. The vaccine passports are shown to be just a farce. Something that will go down in history about, those that proposed them and argued for them. The mandates will be just seen as clowns and known as, people.
Or worse.
How stupid were they at that particular time?
Yeah.
The vaccine mandates will all fall away, and everything will go back to, and we'll regain the Australia that we once used. Now that's the common sense, based on the evidence, based on the science, and based on the data. But my concern is everything that's happened over the last 2 years has been done contrary to the science and the data and the evidence. Now, the other possibility, the other direction it could go in is that you get, you're going to see this Omicron, what I call moronic
The moronic variant.
The cases, we know the cases are likely to really surge. That will give a chance. Oh my God! The media will continue to beat it up. There'll be more calls for lockdowns. You'll get people like McGowan over in Western Australia that will refuse to open the borders because of the Omicron variant. The same in South Australia and Tassie. Palaszczuk will think that she can get more popular by locking the New South Wales Queensland border. There'll be cause for more lockdowns, and then the vaccine mandates. I know you think will fall away. Your vaccine passport or certificate will be invalid unless you've had 2 or more injections for the Omicron variant. Now,
but this is actually
Pfizer was there today saying, the Omicron variant will need 3. You need 3 shots. You go, bang, 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 3 shots over how many months? That will be our vaccine for the Omicron variant. Now, so we could end up exactly where we weren't. Now, remember, the people. This is why elections count. All these people in charge, all these bureaucrats in charge, that made the blunt, that pushed us into all these lockdowns and mandatory injections, are still there. They're all still in charge. And they're going to be. And you can bet. And they love the notoriety that they had from the attention, standing up every day. Today, there were a man aged 102 died, and a woman aged 103 passed away. Run out a list of that. Now there were 42 cases, there were 150 cases and things like that. They loved all that attention. What was it? The project show on Channel 10. They actually have done a calendar of Brett Sutton.
Really?
I thought it was a joke. That's a picture of Brett Sutton, like in giving all these talks. It's a calendar Channel 10 put out, the project show, to try and raise money. Because that's what I'm saying. So these medical bureaucrats, who no one would have heard of before, are now all celebrities with their own cult following. Now, do you think, given half the chance, that they're going to want to keep all this going?
Okay.
So that's the pessimistic view of the
let me make a counterpoint. There is the expression, a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has time to put its pants on.
Yes,
We're 2 years into this, and the truth has very much put its pants on. We're seeing really incredible results with ivermectin out of Japan, out of India, out of Africa, where they're not quite saying it was ivermectin, but they're saying, perhaps Africa's results are actually because of past parasitic infections. They can't bring themselves to say it's because they take ivermectin to deal with parasitic infections, but they're just saying, it's because of past parasitic infections. The truth is catching up, right? It's been 2 years now. And I get out a lot around Melbourne. I talk to a lot of people, not just people who agree with me, but I talk to people right across the spectrum. This is only, Topher is only one facet of who I am and what I do. I'm deeply involved in business. I'm deeply involved in some charities, deeply involved in a number of different communities. The number of people who were hardcore I Stand With Danners in 2020, who now hate his guts, is astonishing. I don't know if you'd be aware of this, Craig, but there was a poll that came out here in Victoria recently that found that 40% of those polled, they polled 2,400 people across, I think it was 4 or maybe 5 different electorates. 40% are undecided, or 30% of the 40% of the 40 percentage points, 30 percentage points have already made up their mind they're going to vote for a minor party.
That's right. I saw that. Yes. Yep.
This is unheard of. This has never been seen before. And this is because the truth is catching up. People are going, no, we didn't handle that the right way. Even those that are like, oh, look, early on, we didn't know, abundance of caution, precautionary principle, which cuts both ways, but they don't see it that way. All that stuff, they're now saying it's no longer reasonable to be doing that. So I'm quite optimistic that the truth is catching up, and it's catching up fairly quickly. And people like yourself, I have a motto. My main motto is good people break bad laws. I have a secondary motto that guides me in a lot of what I do. And that is, it sucks to be right early. And you've lived that, Craig, right? You've lived that. It sucks to be right early. But as time goes by and you get vindicated, it's also one of the most satisfying things to go, yeah, now everyone acknowledges that that's the truth. And I was there from the very beginning saying, this is the truth. And I'm actually genuinely optimistic. I mean, it's hard not to be optimistic when I have the privilege of being someone who speaks at some of these rallies, as do you. I wish you could have come down 2 weekends earlier, because we had hundreds of thousands of people in the Flagstaff Gardens. It was an incredible moment, and we've never seen a crowd like that in Melbourne ever before for any reason, let alone for politics. This wasn't a sports match. This wasn't a cultural event or whatever. This was for politics, and hundreds of thousands of people got out of their homes and came into Melbourne and marched and joined us in that park that day. I think we're making history here, and I'm of the view that the future of Victoria is actually really beautiful, and the future of Australia, I would hope, is likewise really beautiful. Maybe WA notwithstanding, they seem to have gone a little bit crazy over there. But for those of us in New South Wales and Victoria especially, I think the pushback is gathering so much momentum, and we're going to see it in the federal election that's coming up. We're going to see it in any by-elections that come up in Victoria, and I think there's going to be a few by-elections before the next state election. I'm actually genuinely really optimistic.
Well, you're right about the data. The data that is coming out every single day vindicates, the positions that I've had and people arguing on the case of freedom have had. But still, there's still so many people hypnotised and brainwashed.
But less than before. Less than before. This is the thing.
Well, they say the other saying is what was it, the madness of crowds. What's the saying that people go mad in herds and they only regain their senses slowly, one at a time.
Yeah.
And that's where we are. And often it takes.
That's exactly where we are.
And often it takes 10 pieces of data or more the people to get to realise, hang on, I made I've made a mistake here. There's a but the problem against it, you have this natural tendency of these bureaucrats. A lot of these bureaucrats are not going to be able to say I was wrong.
No.
Because to say that, because if they meet, sorry, Ivermectin worked all the time. Yeah, there's a couple of thousand people dead. Could have saved most of them, but we banned it, right?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. There's going to have to be a changing of the guard. There's going to have to be some results at the elections that are going to cause some changes at the top. There's no doubt about that. We need, here in Victoria, we need official apologies from Victoria Police. We need there to be an acknowledgement that they were wrong. But you're absolutely right. That's not going to come from the same people. It's going to come from those people being replaced, and the people that replace them saying, hey, what happened was wrong, and we're now moving ahead in a new direction. But I think we're only a year away from that here in Victoria.
Well, I hope you're right. So there's two ways it can go, but that's why I think you need the political change to happen. That's 100%. Why I think this 100%. Next election is that's why what we are doing, I think, is just so important. You've got to clean out the heads of these bureaucracies, because you're right, they're not going to admit they were wrong. It's only going to be new people. They're going to have the broom's got to go through these organisations. They've got to be restructured because of just stop and think about that ivermectin for a minute. What these people have actually done is denied Australians access to a medical treatment that could have saved people's lives. It's not as though they said, we don't recommend it, or we think that it doesn't work, or there's not enough evidence, as one they say. Okay. They've denied people access to a medical treatment. Mm-hmm. That's in other times has been a war crime.
Yeah.
It's and the evidence that they've denied. Remember that they criminalised doctors giving hydroxychloroquine.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got doctors like, I've spoken to these doctors, Brian Tyson with his clinics out of Southern California, 7,000 patients to his clinics, treated with combinations hydroxychloroquine, zinc, azithromycin, which was Zelenko's protocol. Then they put the ivermectin protocol into it as well. 7,000 patients. I think he's had basically 0 deaths of what he treated early. You've even got the paper of Bureaucracy. Now, when ivermectin, before the TGA got involved and denied Australians access to it, Bureaucracy had documented 600 patients that they treated in Sydney and Victoria, 600. That's all documented,
Yep.
all detailed.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
They had, I think, 4 hospitalizations and 0
Yep.
deaths. Now, out of that equivalent 600 patients, they would have expected 7 deaths.
Yep.
And something like
Yep.
7. There was 70 hospitalizations and 7 deaths. They had 4
Yep.
hospitalizations and 0. So it shows that we could have reduced the hospitalizations here by 80+%.
Yeah.
We could have reduced the deaths significantly. And these people stopped that treatment based upon they thought that it might be dangerous, right? And here's the thing: we've now got the adverse event database. Now, if you can go into the adverse event, I think in all of 2021, I think there was 1 or 2 reported cases where ivermectin alone was the adverse event resulting in adverse event, and the one case was where someone didn't get a doctor's prescription, they self-prescribed it, and they took too much of it. They had bad diarrhea at that hospital, and they were fine. Right? So you're saying ivermectin's not? We don't think ivermectin's safe, and there's no data to back it up.
Yeah.
And yet they're saying we want to inject Australian kids with the Moderna vaccine. Well, the 12-year-old kids.
It's insane. We are deep down the rabbit hole. My own mother recently got quite unwell, and about 10 days in, she went, "Hang on, I've actually got access to some hydroxychloroquine," and she's very well across this stuff, but it just didn't twig to her that it might be COVID or whatever, but she was progressively getting worse. So forget early treatment. She was well and truly, she was over a week into her symptoms. She then got a hold of that protocol, a hydroxychloroquine-based protocol, and in 2 days, her symptoms were gone.
Yeah.
Now, this only happened, so she only did that in the last week.
The number of people that have documented, and you hear this, and then you see these theoretical, you hear doctors, if you wonder who should you listen in situations like that, you should be listening to doctors at the front line,
yes,
that are prescribing it. How do you think it's going, right? We're not listening to those people. No. We're listening to these bureaucrats sitting in ivory towers that don't even see a COVID patient.
And haven't seen any type of patient for 2 decades. Yeah. In the case of Victoria, our chief health officer has never been a frontline doctor in his career. He's been a bureaucrat his entire career. And we're ignoring the frontline doctors and letting him call all the shots. It's absolute madness. There's no other way to say it.
It's not only that; it's been the censorship of the doctors here in Australia. This Afro mob, which another one that need a giant broom through their organisation. Their intimidation of doctors and their silencing of doctors that have a alternate, legitimate medical opinion. I remember the theory was if a doctor prescribes something that's fairly radical, the doctor will say, "Well, go and get a second opinion."
Yep.
That was it. Go and listen to a second opinion. It's okay. But now it's a single source of truth. This government bureaucrat has said this, and single source of truth. And any doctor that goes against the direction from the above, right, will be struck off. And therefore you've had this silence and this bullying of doctors. Like, look what happened to Dr. Mark Hobart. What an outrage.
He gets raided because he's actually daring to give people medical exemptions.
These black shirts come in with Dan Andrews with the black jacket. And I'm an authorised officer. Well, what's your medical skills, mate? Well, I was a former CFMEU official, and now I've got a promotion to an authorised officer, and I'm entitled to go in and make decisions whether I should be able to raid this doctor's surgery and steal all his medical files. Yeah. Oh, come on.
No,
this is like the Stasi stuff from Eastern Europe. That's what's been happening.
All right, look, I want to move on to a new subject. Your work on before I move on, your work on ivermectin, your work on hydroxychloroquine has been outstanding. History, I think, is going to be very, very kind to you, and I am personally grateful like I said before, it was through you that I first heard about ivermectin and then went down and researched it and got to understand.
Well,
Dr.
just on that,
Brody's
there was a time there on the ivermectin and the hydroxychloroquine. I thought, no, I'm the only person fighting this case, and the evidence is so overwhelming. And I don't know if people said that Dr. Pierre Corey, what a champion that bloke is. He gave testimony in the U.S. Senate before Senator Johnson, and I was watching it at night, and he comes on and he goes, "I am a man of science and evidence, and I'm treating all these frontline patients. And I can tell you, the ivermectin saving life." And it was 3 a.m. I started watching, and I was standing in my room, I'm going, "Yes!" I was screaming like I was at a footy match. Yes, get into him, doctor, give it to him. It was just such a relief to see a bloke like that come out and absolutely serve it to them. Someone like a frontline doctor of his experience say, yeah. But that's now over a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And since then
still here we are.
It's banned. It's gone backwards.